And welcome to another episode of Patriots Fourth and Two. I am your host, as always, Derek Havens, and joining me as always is Mr. Steve Balstieri. We're both PatsFans.com bloggers. Today's episode, we're going to talk about a little bit of news from a former Patriots legend that just became fact a couple hours ago. We also are going to talk about some free agents and off-season interesting kind of topic points, and then get into the Patriots' upcoming game. Before we do any of that, as always, Steve, how you doing, man?
All right. It's been a long day, and
Yep.
now we get to relax and talk a little football. So everything's good now.
Well, I'm with you on there. As people who are watching us on our YouTube channel, and please do subscribe if you are, you can tell that I look very tired. I have, I've had a very irregular sleep schedule for the last 16 days or so. But Steve, we have to talk about Bill Belichick becoming the University of North Carolina head football coach. And look, there's a lot of interesting backstories to this. For one, I'm absolutely shocked on a couple of different fronts. I'll get your take first, but I'm shocked because I didn't think it was actually going to happen. It is now confirmed. There are some ties to that area for him, going back to his dad and things like that. I did think that he was going to probably get pursued by um, some other NFL teams after this year. I do think some of these things are related and intertwined, but before we kind of go down that rabbit hole, we should spend a couple minutes talking about it. What's your take on Bill coming to UNC and going to Chapel Hill?
I think it's absolutely fascinating, and I think I see a lot of negative stuff about this. I don't think this is going to be a negative. I think
What have
that
you seen from a negative standpoint, out of
well,
curiosity?
I see a lot of people saying that Bill can't communicate with the younger players, and you know
Oh,
he's not going to want to go on recruiting trips. They said look at his press conferences, but as we've seen, his press conferences are one thing. You see him on media, he's totally different. And there's not going to be media in somebody's living room when he's trying to convince a kid to sign with North Carolina.
I was actually going to say I thought you were going to say something totally different. I was going to say, I mean, I've heard Saban talk on
Right.
um, a couple of different fronts about the NIL thing and all the layers that offers up, which of course opened up the alleyways and opportunities for people to take shots at Alabama was paying players long before it was even legal and things like that. But you figure, even though Bill and Saban are not the same person, they obviously are very good friends. They come from the similar cloth. You would think that that Bill wouldn't want to deal with the NIL stuff because even in college right now, there's so many. I mean, you deal with the professional players, which are big bank accounts and they're kind of big teenagers, in a lot of ways. But right now, I mean, college players have so much power, more than ever. So it's like kind of interesting that he would want to do that, especially for not like a huge program. Like, I mean, it's not like a D1 program, but it's not like Alabama, Clemson,
Yep.
Georgia, or whatever. Like it's not like a top tier program. So the fact that he wants to go back and do this is kind of interesting because it's like maybe he just realized that he wasn't going to get a good opportunity in the pros again, or one that he was going to be really happy with, and he felt like this could be an opportunity for him to kind of get back to his grassroots and just coach kids and kind of let them. I don't know. Let the kids that he's coaching kind of give him a little bit of life by going to the lower level than the NFL. I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting if you look at it from a few different ways.
Well, the way I see this, excuse me, um, if you're a high school senior this year and you have it in your mind that you think you can make it in the NFL, why wouldn't you want to go to UNC next year? Because you'll be coached by the best. And that's, I mean, you know, I was very cynical about this coming to bear until I saw Belichick's comments on Pat McAfee's show the other day,
Mm-hmm.
and how he talked about building a program, and I was
Yep.
like, oh, I'm totally on board with this now. And think about it. I mean, you're a high school kid coming into college,
Oh yeah.
and you don't want to be coached by Bill Belichick
If
because
you don't think right before this transfer portal is about to open, if you don't think that Bill's going to pull some serious high time or big time players to this program, you are sorely mistaken. And I also there also has been a rumor going around. Again, it's just a rumor. It's not for sure that he potentially could have Steve, his son, the heir apparent to him. There's been that floating around too. That was part of this deal. Like,
right,
hey, you can finish off your coaching career here, and oh, by the way, your son will also move from defensive coordinator at University of Washington to head coach when you do hang him up. You know what I mean?
right,
Um,
and Mike Lombardi is going with him as the general manager.
yeah, that to me is freaking hilarious, but that's whatever. That's kind of a different thing for me.
Oh well, I mean he's a Belichick confidant. I mean, those two have been in lockstep for years.
Well, it's clear that the UNC, the powers that be, it's clear they gave him carte blanche. Be like, just whoever you want. Like if you come here, here's the check. Go ahead and write the amount that you want. And if you want to make your son the next head coach, if you want to bring in your friend as the GM, if you want to make someone an administrative assistant or whatever, go ahead. Like it's all yours. They handed him the keys and said, just take it. It's yours.
Right, and I think you're going to have a lot of pro coaches there
Mm-hmm.
because you're going to have Steve Belichick as the defensive coordinator. I wouldn't be at all shocked to see Josh McDaniel be the offensive coordinator. And another thing to think about
And
with not only
Patricia's
the
going to go.
transfer portal,
Patricia's going to go, by the way.
what?
I said Patricia. He's going to go. That's going to
Yeah,
happen.
he'll have some kind of role with Bill.
Mm-hmm.
But think about this: if you're going to enter the transfer portal, or you're a senior in high school, next year UNC is going to get a lot of airtime on television just from the Bill Belichick thing. You know what I mean?
That's why they probably found. I'm kind of curious how this came about, and I'm sure we're going to hear about it at some point. But for UNC, I mean, just having this happen is huge for that school and program right now. I mean, on so many different levels, and you just alluded to one of them, which is one of 100 different variables off the top of my head, which is just bringing money and eyes to the school, to the program, etc. I mean, it's massive, but I think on some level there had to be some kind of back channel thing, and I have a feeling it came about with somebody making some kind of like throwaway comment, to Bill, and being like, hey, they would give you everything you want. And then all of a sudden it kind of festers in his mind and, kind of marinates a little bit. And all of a sudden he's like, you know what, this actually might work. And UNC's probably sitting there giddy, for all the benefits that they're going to reap out of this. And it's going to be worth every penny that they spend, whatever amount they're going to pay him, like from a dollar for dollar standpoint, whatever amount it's going to be, I guarantee they get it back in a ton of different ways.
Yeah, and before I go any further,
Mm-hmm.
I talked to Russ just about an hour or so ago, and
Okay.
and he wanted to say most definitely out here that he saw your post earlier.
Which one?
The one where you said that Gerard Mayo has
Oh yeah.
0% chance. Okay, and we'll get into that in a minute. But he wanted to say it just pained him to say it, but he agreed 100% with you.
I'm sure I'm sure there's a for some maybe of our younger listeners or viewers, there's a meme, that's like, that says like, the worst person just made a great point. That's how Russ felt, admitting to that, I'm sure. And we'll get into the whole Gerard Mayo thing, which was the story on in the Boston media. But we'll get to that in a second. But
Yeah.
Russ, I appreciate you telling Steve that. And also, if I could go ahead and I know you edit the show, if you could go ahead and clip that little segment where Steve just told me that, and you could just send it to me so I could play it a couple times a day, that would make me feel phenomenal.
And,
So,
and Russ also had another statement,
uh
and he wanted me to say this on the air because he wants everyone to know that, okay, that the whole thing with Bill Belichick chasing Don Shula's record was nothing more than a media-driven thing that that I'm paraphrasing here, but he said if
yeah.
Bill Belichick was so adamant about chasing Don Shula's record, he would be looking for an NFL job, not going to UNC. So he wanted everyone to know that that was another knock on the media, right? So
Well, Russ, I don't think you're wrong, okay, but what I would say to Russ, and again, I know you're paraphrasing or playing a game of telephone, okay, so I'm not gonna harp on it for too long, but I would say two things. I think that there is somewhat of a media creation, but I do think at the same time he's a human and he has shown to be petty on some different levels, and he's been shown to be really competitive over his time. So it would be only natural human instinct, someone who's as great as he's been for so long, to want to go ahead and achieve that. Do I think it really matters to him? Probably not. I mean, he's had plenty of success. Do I think it bothers him that he didn't get it? Probably a little bit. But at the same time,
well, I know he keeps a grudge, and
yeah.
Shula took a shot at him,
Oh yeah.
a couple of shots at him.
They are not friends. Belichick and Shula are not
We're
friends.
not.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Shula's dead now.
Well, okay. Yeah. Yeah, sir. I guess I should use the past tense, rest in peace to the Shula
But
family. No disrespect.
but when it's all said and done, Shula may have coached in one more games, but Bill has 8 Super Bowls. He had 2.
Yep.
So
I'm sure I'm the other thing about this bill going to UNC, and we can come back and circle back on this. I'm sure there'll be some other talking points and stuff, and just go back to Russ's comments and all that about the record. I kind of disagree with the whole record thing about him picking a college job. I think we know, I'll use this as an example. Every year when college players that are draft eligible go to the combine, we hear about all the elbows being rubbed in Indy about, between players, agents, teams, little things. We hear plenty of stories and plenty of scuttlebutt. And what I would say is there's no way that those conversations don't happen all year round. Belichick knows so many people in so many different organizations. There's no way he wasn't hearing certain things. And he probably didn't like his professional options. And then what I think happened is the UNC thing kind of came out of nowhere. And the more he thought about it, he was like, I can keep coaching, not worry about the NFL legacy thing anymore, and I can just work with just straight football, what he loves, with young kids that could potentially set up his son for a future head coaching job in the college football scheme, and he could just kind of walk away and have literally the whole keys to the program, so he could bring in all his friends like Michael Lombardi, like Matt Patricia, like whoever, and they could just go ahead and do that. That's what I kind of think happened. I just don't think he liked what the professional options were going to be, because I think a lot of people were worried about how much power he was going to get, which I think was one of the biggest issues in Atlanta, and then what his time frame was to go ahead and get in, and then go ahead and make the appropriate corrections for whatever team in order to go ahead and have success.
Well, I guess when all is said and done, I guess Bill really doesn't like Florida because I thought Jacksonville was going to give him
Hmm.
everything that he wanted.
And as Russ knows, I mean, he knows the Khan family well. I forget the
Yeah,
son's name, but I
yeah,
mean
Tony.
they have extremely deep pockets. They're billionaires. So
Yeah,
I mean I thought that was a definite possibility.
yeah, and so this is going to be interesting. I think he's going to be very successful because as we all as we we've known for all these years, Bill can coach and he can come up with a game plan, and it's all going to depend on the players that he brings in and he has around him, but nobody makes adjustments like Bill. That's why
Yep.
I think they're going to be successful.
Oh,
I
sure.
mean, and he's going to have kids hungry because he's putting it out there. Hey, I'm a guy who won 8 Super Bowls. If I can't recognize the talent to get you into the NFL, then nobody else is. So
Well, as um, previous guest on the show, one of the best in the business, Fieldy Yates, just tweeted out Bill Belichick's North Carolina coaching debut is scheduled for August 30th against TCU. So if anyone was curious, and you can mark it down. Do you want to get into the Gerard Mayo, Greg Bedard whole thing?
sure,
Okay. So here's the thing. So I don't want to speak for Greg Bedard. He was on Felger and Maz. He does a weekly spot. I think he does actually a really good job on that show. I know some people probably think less of him than others. Maybe you really like him, maybe you don't. Whatever opinion you have of him, for whatever reason, I think it's fair to say, at the bare minimum, that he's been in this field for a very long time and he's worked for a lot of different teams. So he is, relatively well connected. Now, what happens on Felger and Maz, even though they're both extremely successful in a huge market, what happens more often than not, as we've talked about on the show before, Steve, and this is kind of a long-winded preface, but I think it's important for the conversation. Whatever you think of Michael Felger or Tony Maserati, um, I'm sure a lot of what they say is to try to get a reaction. Okay. And from the leader of the show, Russ Goldman, as they really get under his skin sometimes. And that's like kind of what they're trying to do. At the same time, they do have some connections. You know what I mean? Well, Greg, when he's on his show, who writes for Boston Sports Journal, which is his own website, um, and what he when he comes on, he usually drops a couple of different things. Well, this week he dropped a nugget that essentially that Gerard Mayo was coaching for his job for the rest of the games, the rest of the season. I ended up tweeting out, which drew some interesting back and forth. And here's the quote: "There is 0% Mayo is coaching for his job, quote unquote. Tired of hearing this. Put aside the journalistic politic BS. The Crafts aren't going to fire the best coach in NFL history. Hire his successor. In parentheses, say they targeted him years in advance, then fire him after 1 year. Terrible look, no shot." So when I say journalistic politic BS, there's a lot of behind the scenes sniping between beat guys. For example, when Mike Reese got the ESPN Boston job, he took it from Michael Felger, which is part of the reason the two of them go back and forth all the time. And there's a lot of situations like that. I don't want to just use that as the only example. I just wanted to use it as one because I felt like most people will know who I'm talking about. So I'm putting aside some of the politics stuff with that. The Crafts, look, I think was Gerard Mayo my first choice for him to be the successor to Bill? No. Was I against the hire of Gerard Mayo? No. You and I both said on the show we had some concerns, but we thought there were some good things. Do I think is my confidence a little shaken, Steve, in some of the things that I've seen throughout the year? Yes. That's not from a win and loss perspective, though. That is from a kind of in-game management perspective on a couple of different levels, and sometimes him putting his foot in his mouth. Um, but um, at the same time, the Crafts, who have said afterwards that they had targeted Gerard for several years and then hired him, I think they feel, as much as they're probably frustrated with the the win loss record, they knew it wasn't going to be fixed in 1 year, and they also know that they have now endorsed Gerard, and it would come off bad. And I think from an optic perspective, they would be way too afraid to go ahead and fire Bill for a bunch of different levels, unless it was like an egregious thing. But we're not talking about like Urban Meyer in Jacksonville. Like it's not like something like that. So again, kind of long-winded. I'm sure I didn't touch all the bases, but fact of the matter is, I feel like incredibly strong that Gerard Mayo is not getting fired in this year. Next year, if it's the same thing, maybe I'd put a higher percentage on it. I think he's going to get 3 years, Steve, at minimum, and it would have to be a total dumpster fire for the Crafts to go ahead and fire him, unless. And this is going to sound really morbid and whatever, but unless Robert Kraft passes away and Jonathan, who a lot of people feel like has been the kind of puppeteer, unless he just gets super power hungry and pissed off and didn't like his dad's decision in the first place, I think that Gerard's going to get 2 or 3 years at least. He's not getting fired at the end of this year.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Um, um, I don't see them firing Mayo this year. I don't see that happening whatsoever. I think that they're going to be disappointed with the way things went this year because obviously they had a chance to win some more games
Yep.
that probably they should have. I mean, they could easily have 6 or 7 wins right now. It
Yep.
wouldn't change the fact that they're a very bad team, and we've said that here in the past.
And I hear Georgia in the background there.
Yeah, well, she was raising Cain outside.
No, it's fine. I would say this though. We did the same thing at this point of the schedule last year with the Patriots, but it wasn't a coaching thing. We just felt like there wasn't enough good quarterback play to have them put some more points on the board, and then there were so many random things, and they could have had a couple more wins. This year, it is more of a coaching thing. And they have the quarterback. If only we could have married them together, we actually might be more competitive. But it's kind of two different. It's kind of a similar story 2 years apart, but for different reasons.
Yeah, and again, I mean, there's no way that I could see Mayo getting fired in January. I mean, after one season, no. I think there's 0% chance of this. I think, like you said, you know, they fired the best coach in the history of the game, and they said they've been eyeing this guy as his potential replacement for 5 years, and when you look at the roster on this team, and you're gonna cut the rope from this guy after one season, no way.
Yep.
Now, could they have some discussions? Hey, next year this has to be better, that has to be better. I can see them laying out the law, which is their right as owners. They're allowed to do that. They own the team, right? But in regards of Mayo being fired, I think there's 0% chance. And honestly, I don't think he'd be fired next year either, unless they win fewer games than they did this year.
I think again that I think the Crafts on balance have done a really good job for their entire tenure. I don't think they're overly reactionary, but they're not tone deaf. And I think that the only thing right now, they knew that parting ways with Bill which was their decision. I think parting ways with Bill, they knew was going to be a little bit of a rock the boat situation for a few different reasons. There are some people, and I don't want to speak for him, okay, but like as we were talking about, Russ was really upset that they fired Bill and thought that it was a huge mistake. And again, Russ, I'm so sorry if I'm speaking for you, but I feel like that's fair to say. There are people like me who felt like I can look at it and say both things are true, which is Bill was great, is great, and also the fact that they needed to make some kind of change because what was happening was not working. The moment that Tom Brady worked up the door, that foundation started to crack and they needed to go ahead and repair it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the Crafts are incredibly intelligent and absolutely super aware of what the fans hear. Don't forget, Robert Kraft was a fan of the team before he purchased the team. He happened to have the opportunity to buy it, and he had the money to do so. But he was a fan of the team, and I still think he very much cares about the fans' opinion. Um, and I don't think every owner is like that, by the way. But I think that the Crafts care about what the fans think. And the only way I think that Gerard gets fired even next year, again, outside of like some kind of like legal, like crazy legal thing or whatever, I think is if people think that he's ruining Drake May, because I think a lot of people have rallied around Drake May and think he could be the next guy. And that would be the one thing that would sink him. That would be the what do you call it? Like the battleship game, like before you know you're going down. That would be the only thing that I think that would really sink Gerard next year. Otherwise, I think he has at least 3 years, and they're not going to fire him in season. They care too much. He's been too big of a part of the organization since really like 17, 18 years ago. That's not going to happen. I don't think. What's your take on that whole thing?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, look, this whole thing that came out, with Felger and Maz and
Mm-hmm.
Greg. I mean, I'm not going to get into whatever. I don't see that happening. And I know, he's saying he has his people inside, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't doubt that that's true. All these big guys, that once they've been here for a while, um, they, you know, they acquire their own sources inside the building. But
Sure.
I just don't think it's going to happen. And I agree with you with the Crafts. I mean, Mayo, uh, not to anything close to the extent of Belichick, but Mayo's been a close part of this franchise for a long time now.
Yeah.
I mean, he
Since he
was
was a
drafted
since
by
since he
them in the
was
first round.
yeah.
He played his entire career here, and then he came back and started coaching. Now he's the head coach. They're not going to pull the rug out from under him. I just
Nope.
don't see that happen.
And
And
again, I want to reiterate too. I just feel like I had to say this one more time. Again, I'm not taking shots at Greg. And people who are listening to this, if you like Greg or if you don't like Greg, I still
it
feel
has
like
nothing to do with it, right?
I feel like that needs to be a total aside. I think that we all understand that he's just not making this up. Okay. He hasn't been the only person that has called out Gerard Mayo. There's been a lot of fans. It's funny. I see similar fans that are questioning Bill's in-game decisions that are then making fun of Greg Bedard for his take about him being fired. I'm like, well, like there, there's got to be some kind of accountability on somebody's end here. But anyway, I think with Greg, I don't think he was just making it up. I just don't think it's absolutely going to happen.
Yeah, and again, I mean,
I
I
would. I Go ahead. Sorry.
as Todd's saying here, so loyalty over results, not so
I
much that. I
Yeah.
think it's they knew coming into this season they didn't have a great roster. That everything for them to be competitive, for the entire year, things were going to have to break in their favor, and nothing has. That's the other thing. Nothing's broke in their favor. They've had a slew of injuries, guys that they were looking toward to at least be, you know, uh, placeholders for other guys down line haven't lived up to that. And some of the free agents that they signed haven't lived up to that either. I
Nope.
mean, um, you know, Chuck Sikorafor, I mean, he quit the team after one game.
Yep.
Um, and then,
They went after KJ Osborne. There's been some issues there behind the scenes for a few weeks. He was waived the other day,
yeah,
which seemed to open up some room, for someone else to step in. They had a kind of a full receiver room anyway. That seemed like it was going down a bad path. And look, Todd, I love you, mean it. Okay, so don't take this personally. You're like the third or fourth person I've seen say that about like, okay, so the Crafts are being loyal to Gerard instead of respecting like what the record is, like, what the result is. The fact of the matter is the Crafts made their decision to hire Gerard. I think it's a sign of a huge, huge dysfunction issue. If they were to fire him now, I think that would actually be more alarming to me than anything. I don't think that would show any kind of stabilization signs. They sure send us a lot of surveys. Yes. Yep. True.
that's a good one.
All right, why don't we take a break here, Steve, for podcast purposes, and when we come back, we'll get into the Patriots game this coming week against the Arizona Cardinals. All right, we are back here on Patriots 4th and 2. Steve Balichieri, Derek Havens. Please do take a second if you're watching to subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, or if you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you can like, share, leave us a review. It keeps us high in the podcast rankings so other Patriots fans can find us. Steve, we talked about the Gerard Mayo, kind of discourse for a while. Had a couple other things to say. Is there anything else that you want to touch on before we jump into this Cardinals game?
Well, I just think that they potentially have a couple of a couple of players that could potentially make a big splash for them. In the last quarter of the season, that being Cole Strange is coming back,
Yep.
and Caden Wallace is coming back.
Yep.
And think about it. I mean, Cole Strange was the starting left guard. I
Yep.
know that they've been, kind of kicking around the idea of maybe him playing center. But
Yep.
when I look at the offensive line, I don't see center as the number one need. So I would think if you put Cole Strange back at where he was at left guard, he's tailor-made for this offense that Alex Van Pelt runs. When he was drafted, a lot of the people that do draft prognostications and whatnot said he wasn't a very good fit for what the Patriots like to run. Well, he is a good fit for what Alex Van Pelt likes. Think about, if he can solidify that left guard position now. They get a little more out of the running game, and he does a little bit better job in pass protection. You could be looking at a little bit better offensive output, especially in the red zone. Same thing with Caden Wallace. I mean,
Well, hold up. Put the pin in Caden Wallace for a second, Steve. Don't you think it would actually benefit the team more? Because we both have talked offline about the fact that they seem to really like Layden Robinson. So wouldn't it be the best case scenario if Cole Strange, who reportedly is getting more attention at center than even more guard, even though he was drafted as a guard, wouldn't it be the best case scenario for Cole Strange to come back as center so they could go ahead, and take care of the center position, which has been an issue for a while? Layden goes ahead and develops at left guard, and then they have kind of two of those things checked off moving forward. Because I know we
no,
don't want to say this, but David Andrews is likely not going to be back again for the team. There's a lot of chance. There's a big chance he retires after the end of this year. So
right.
wouldn't it be the best case scenario if Cole Strange comes back as a center?
Well, see, now you have all of the offseason to do that.
Right.
I'm looking at it. Look, they keep saying we want to put our best football forward these last 4 games. Well, they're playing very tough teams. So therefore, I'm looking at it. okay, if you want to move him to center, you have all off season to do that. As soon as the season's over, you could start working him out as a center. I think, spending time with Drake May and getting all their snap counts and whatnot down, there's plenty of time for that. But
Mm-hmm.
right now, you want to keep your quarterback upright. And Layden Robinson, the same thing. I mean, he's a rookie. He struggled this year. I think, he's definitely a possibility at left guard in the future because I think Owenu should stay at right guard. But then you have all offseason to get him prepared for that. And I wouldn't mind seeing a little, um, this last month, seeing Cole Strange play a little guard, play a little center, and see if he's comfortable there.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I'm just looking at it. Mayo keeps saying they want to play their best football in the last month of the season. Well, they've been moving the ball well between the 20s. Once
Mm-hmm.
they get inside the red zone, their running game tends to disappear.
And they've had that problem for a little while, but it's the frustrating thing and the annoying thing is that it's been for different reasons. And right now, I feel like the biggest reason is I just don't know if it's a talent issue. They have enough talent to kind of move the ball, and Drake's moving the ball, but things get tighter in the red zone. And so, are there guys that are able to make enough plays? I mean, we've talked about the
Yeah, well,
importance of Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper in the
I've been
offense, and
saying, for a couple of weeks that part of their, we know the struggles with the offensive line. We know that.
mhm,
But a big part of their struggles is their wide receivers in the red zone are virtually,
they
non-productive.
can't
I mean,
they
when they
can't
get in
create
the
the
red zone,
separation.
it's Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper, or Ramondre.
Yeah, there's 3 options, or Drake May's legs,
Yeah.
but that's basically it, you know? But everyone's blanketed, and then you're asking a rookie quarterback to, pull something out of his backside, okay, and his Jets posterior. So I don't
Yeah.
have to. I don't want to make any contributions to Miguel's swear jar because I can't afford it right now. But I, it's like it's just things get tight and they're struggling there. I just think that there's. I think there'll be ways for them to attack that and correct it, you know, after this year, but it won't be able to be done in season. It's just not going to be enough.
Right. And
And ironically, AVP I think has done a really good job, which we talked about on the last show, and as we've talked about offline a few times.
and I still see, uh, so many comments on social media about getting rid of AVP
Mm,
before Mayo or Covington, and I'm
I
like, I
totally
don't.
disagree. I would go the opposite way.
Yeah. I think he's done a fantastic job. Look at the personnel that he's working with.
Hmm.
Okay, and if nothing else, look at what they've been able to do with Drake May. And then lately, I've been seeing these comments. Well, if they had started May on day one, then they wouldn't be in this problem right now. And I don't buy that
Let me
uh,
ask you this. Let me say this
because the
actually.
offensive line was even worse early in the season.
Let me say this, and you tell me if I'm speaking out of turn. Okay? Do you think it's fair? Because I feel like you and I, as we typically are, we're pretty aligned on the coaching staff of Covington, Mayo, and AVP. I feel like we were both most excited about Covington. I felt like we both liked the Mayo hire, but it wasn't our first choice. And then the third was AVP. And I would literally go in the opposite direction right now based on performance, even though I don't think any of them are going to lose their jobs. And I think right now, even though the offense isn't performing, it seems more like a talent issue than anything else. And Drake making some of these rookie mistakes, which is understandable because he's in his rookie season, making adjustments. We're not that far in. I think AVP has done the best of the 3 of those guys. Do you feel like that's fair?
By far, by far. I mean, look at where the offense was. Okay, at the beginning, and Todd had another good comment. I don't know if this
I
time.
think we'll win one, Todd. I think we'll win one. The question is for those people who are listening is Todd was commenting, do we win one of the last 4 games? I think the Patriots win one more game, but I don't think I'd be shocked if they won more than one.
Yeah. I mean, they have 2 games against Buffalo.
Yeah, who are just a well-oiled machine right now. They're just playing lights out.
Yeah, their defense played crappy on Sunday, but Josh Allen's 6 touchdowns. I mean,
right now, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, they're just playing at such a high level. It's incredible. I mean, we know what Patrick Mahomes can do, but right now the Chiefs are winning. The reason that people should be annoyed with the Chiefs, if you're not a Kansas City fan, is that they're showing that they can win like the Patriots did in the early 2000s. I'm sure this is going to go right up Russ's backside, but they're not winning 44-7. They're winning with good defense. They're winning with logical coaching. I keep seeing this thing from people, and I'm not even singling out anybody. I'm not trying to sound like I'm like holier than thou or looking down my nose at anybody for making these comments, but I see these comments from people I follow on Twitter or other socials, and it's like, oh, the Chiefs are so lucky. Well, you know what? The Patriots were really lucky for a long time too. Like sometimes the ball just bounces your way, but sometimes it's also like, hey, you got good coaching, you got the best player in the league, and yeah, the ball's going to bounce your way even more. So yeah, you're going to pull more things, out of your rear end. But right now, that should scare most people about the Chiefs, is that they're showing that they can do it in a totally different way than they've done it the last couple of years. But yeah, Josh Allen, Steve, playing lights out right now, and the Bills' defense didn't play great the other night, but they still are making things happen, and you're seeing him and them look like they're gaining more confidence as a team, which will only make things more difficult for all their opponents in the postseason.
Yep, I agree with that. But getting back to AVP, I mean, we got off on a tangent there.
Of course.
I look at where the offense was early in the season, and they were averaging, I think it was 120 yards passing per game. They're still 31st, but now they're averaging 170 yards a game. So think about where, once Drake May took over, what they've been averaging to push that up an additional, 50 yards per game.
And see, the other thing too, though, Steve, is that people are forgetting this. AVP was brand new here. So he's installing this whole new system, a whole new offensive line coach, whole new receivers coach. One of their best receivers was coming off an injury and wasn't even activated till later. They had 2 young receivers, both the second and then a 4th rounder. The 2 of their best players are both tight ends. One of them was brand new, even though he's from a former system. It's still a different place, different thing. You got a rookie head coach, you got a rookie quarterback. You're one of your best players in your entire team, your running back, coming off an injury. Like, there's a lot of factors. So you're seeing people slowly build and get into this. And I think it should be more encouraging for people that we're where they are right now. I know we're not seeing the results we want from a win column standpoint, but you should be seeing these things from a yardage standpoint, a points standpoint. You should see these things building and have a lot of faith that they will only be able to get better moving forward.
And I agree with Todd. Good teams find ways to win. And they're not a good team right now.
Yeah.
They're not.
Yeah. Yep.
But there you can see improvement in the offense. Mm-hmm. I mean, the last couple of weeks, they went like 385 yards to 420 last week.
Yep.
The red zone has been a killer for them.
Yep.
And that part of that is a talent issue. Now, I've disagreed with some of the calls, he's made down there. But, that's always the way, right? I mean, you look at a second down play and, the call he makes, if it hits, you're saying, what a great call. And if it doesn't, you're like, why?
It's always more execution. We know this. It's always more execution than play calling. Like, there's, But there's been a lot of good play calls. Like there's the little
Shovel
shovel
pass.
pass, some of the
The
movement.
run, the
There was
run to
a
Gibson
lot of
last week.
motion, the
Yeah.
previous week.
Yeah, they're using more motion the last few weeks, which I like. I
Me
don't
too.
know why they don't use more of it. Maybe it was because the guys weren't getting the basics down. Um,
Hmm.
but they're using more of that, and you know, um, you know, when I look at the offense, I can definitely see the improvement there. You're starting to see what AVP's trying to do,
Yes.
and the concepts are good. They're there. It's again, I think a lot of it is a talent issue, and they're just not connecting. I mean, when he came out, Jalen Polk was supposed to have steel claws for hands, and I mean, how many passes has he dropped this year? I
A
mean,
lot.
and he's struggling. I mean, he never seems to. He never seems to be in the right place.
Hmm.
And in training camp, he was doing so much better. And in preseason, same thing. Now it's like I think it's a mental thing with him, but we'll have to see. But they definitely need an addition with a top flight wide receiver.
Yeah, well, but we have time to get into that. So let's get into the Cardinals, Steve. I think all these discussions we've had have all been important and whatever. But we do want to talk about the game coming up now, coming off the bye, incredibly late bye for the players.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to. I don't want to pretend that I'm some kind of insider. I've never been that, but I did hear from a couple of people that are, I guess, connected to the team, but aren't actually players, just connected to them. I did hear that some of the players were happy about the bye week, but some of them kind of wish the bye week was not even a thing. They just want to get through the season because they kind of know where they're at, and
Yeah.
everyone's just beaten down. They're hearing more noise. There's been a lot of injuries. There's been some stress. So, this is going to be a really interesting game. It's going to be a 4:25 Eastern start. Playing in a place where they're relatively familiar. They've played the Cardinals. I think this will be the third out of the last 4 or 5 years they've played them. Cardinals are interesting spot. They've been really playing hard under Gannon as a head coach. They've been really more competitive. They're third in their own division. That NFC West division has been really good. I mean, you got the Rams, the Seahawks, the 49ers, the Cardinals. They're really duking it out. So this is a big game for the Cardinals as they kind of go down the stretch and they still have a good shot at the postseason. I think this could be a really big game for the Patriots, just at least from a competitive standpoint, I think that these games down the stretch, the worst thing that could happen to the Patriots outside of losing, obviously, or injury, would be to be non-competitive. I think you really want to see some fight. You want to see some of these young players build and go ahead, and you want to see what you have moving forward, because it's going to definitely affect our discourse on the offseason. But you want to see these players fight. I think it's big for the team chemistry as you try to build a new program with Mayo instead of Belichick. What are your first thoughts with the Cardinals right away, Steve? Right off the top.
Well, I think consistency is their biggest issue because we've seen them. I mean, there are times when you watch them and they just look so good. And then like last week, the start of the game, Kyler Murray throws two interceptions on two consecutive passes in the first quarter, and they get behind the eight ball and they could never catch up. I mean, he played much better in the second half, but that consistency with them isn't there. But when I look at them defensively, I think the Patriots are going to be able to move the ball on them, both in the running game and in the passing game. Um, but when I look at the Cardinals' offense, their running game, I think it's sixth in the league. They average about 140 yards a game on the ground, and it comes from James Conner and Kyler Murray. And Murray's the one that scares me more than anything in this game because when he takes off, I mean, he can make some big yardage and then make plays with his feet.
That's
So
funny you said that, and I don't want to give away one of my keys. I guess I kind of going to, but I wonder if Brendan Schooler could be a sneaky X factor in this game. I wonder if they try to use him in the box a lot just to go ahead and make sure that Kyler doesn't go ahead and extend. He's going to extend plays. He's going to extend plays. That's what he does. Kyler Murray's a frustrating player because he can make these crazy plays. And I mean, you're like, yeah, well, this is why he was drafted in 2 of the top 4, major, professional sports teams in the top 10. But he makes these dumb plays too sometimes, and
yep.
and whatever, because maybe he's trying to do too much. But I wonder if Schooler is going to be used by Covington and Mayo on the defensive side to just keep an eye on him, because they've had some problems with containment and some of the speed issues, and it doesn't seem like they're trusting some of the other guys. I have a feeling they're going to be looking to Schooler to play more in the box. I think that's going to be one of the things we're going to be talking about next week.
You're right, and see that and again, when flipping to the Patriots defense, by putting Schooler as your one of your interior linebackers, it won't take long for the Cardinals to start trying to run right at that with Connor, who's very good as well.
Right.
So I think this is a big game for guys like Devon Godchild and Christian Barmore. If they can, keep Connor, from busting big gains, especially up the middle, then that Schooler Longhorn package that you were just mentioning, I think that could come into play a lot more effectively.
Right.
But the other guy that scares me on the Cardinals offense, I know they drafted Marvin Harrison.
Yep. Who's been really good.
Really good. But the guy that scares me is Trey McBride.
Yep. Yes, you and I are so much alike. It's so
he's
annoying.
So underrated as a tight end.
I think this year he's starting to get a little bit more recognition.
I mean,
he's a baller. He's a baller.
Yeah. And one of the things we've seen is the Patriots have had trouble covering the tight ends.
Yep.
And he's a guy that scares me in the passing game.
I'm hoping that Jabril Peppers is going to play in this game. I think he will, and I think that would help the situation with McBride. But the thing that would scare me about that also would be that it's, he's knocking some rust off, and McBride has been really, really coming on. I mean, you're seeing him all over. He's so hard to defend. A guy that he kind of reminds me of, or I guess the other guy probably reminds me more of him, is a little bit of Dalton Kincaid in Buffalo. I feel like he's going to follow that similar trajectory where it might take him a little time, but he's obviously a different player than Rob Gronkowski, but he's still, the one thing that still holds true is, he's bigger than corners and he's faster than linebackers. So he's like a matchup nightmare.
Yep.
He's been doing that. The other guy they have is a rookie, Michael Wilson, who I want to say was out of Stanford, if I'm not mistaken, and he had a touchdown the other night. Great grab, great ball placement by Murray.
Yeah, for a rookie, he's got 39 catches and almost 500 yards.
Yeah, and he had a lot of injuries coming out, which is why he dropped in the draft the way he did. But he's also a tough matchup because he's built like a tight end, but he's more of a receiver. He has a different frame than not Kincaid. McBride. But both of them offer different issues. Not to mention, again, the guy that you put aside, which is definitely fair, which is Marvin Harrison Jr. That's your own issue. Luckily, you have Christian Gonzalez, who you're hoping is going to be able to at least neutralize him a little bit. To me, those two guys are the ones I'm worried about the most. But look, let's skip the matchups. I don't want to go too long tonight, and it's late. It feels like it's 4 a.m. for me, but that's just because, new dad.
It feels like that here too.
It's only 8 o'clock for me. I'm like falling asleep here. But no, I mean, let's skip ahead. Let's skip ahead from the matchups and just go right into the three keys of the game. Steve, do you want to start or do you want me to?
Go. You can start this week.
Okay, so for me, my first key is something that you mentioned. I think the defensive line, it's going to be a huge discipline week for the defensive line. I think that you have so many different issues. You got to worry about, where Kyler Murray is going to be. You got to worry about James Conner, because if you go ahead and if you go ahead and let Kyler extend plays all day long, well, your back end's only be able to cover for so long. But then you're going to go ahead and if you don't get to him, then he's not going to make some of the poor decisions that he's kind of prone to making at times. And if you're too worried about the quarterback, you might over pursue and get a big runs, or you might go ahead and open up huge running lanes for James Conner. And they've been able to really run the ball well overall. So I think the defensive line discipline, Steve, I think that is, to me, one of the biggest things this week. Second thing to me is to go ahead and pressure and contain Murray, but without being too aggressive. And I know some of these things are kind of overlapping, but I do think that there are issues there. Murray has been really good. I think this has been a pretty good year for him, overall. But I do think that he can make some pretty boneheaded mistakes when he's under duress. So you have to go ahead. They have to go ahead and kind of spin the dial a little bit on the back end. I'll be curious what they come up with. I would be shocked if we didn't say coming out of this game, hey, they went with some cover 2 here. Hey, they had Schooler in the front 7. Hey, they had some fire zones or some kind of corner blitz, just different things to try to make it interesting and keep him on his toes, because I think that he could be prone to mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, that's been the knock on him is his consistency. He looks like world beater 1 minute, and then
and then he throws this pick where you're just like, what are you looking at?
What
here?
Was he thinking?
Exactly. So I think spinning that dial is super important. And the third thing for me is going to be something that we talked off the top, and I want to see them hopefully get better at this. And part of this is on Drake, but it's going to be efficiency in the red zone. I want to see them. That's been a knocking point for them for several weeks, and I think that we've seen Drake, as good as he's been overall as a rookie, he has made a lot of similar mistakes, which I think he'll break out of. But they need to be more efficient in the red zone. They're not a good enough team to overcome some of these problems that they keep having in these turnovers. They can't squander away possession, Steve. We talk about football math. We've talked about it for 13 years. 7 beats 3 every time, no matter how you slice it. They got to figure out a way to punch it in this week versus Arizona.
Yeah. I agree with your keys to the game, because I have, from our conversation, I have pretty much the same thing. I mean, they're a little different, but to Todd's question, who'll be on McBride? I'm hoping it's going to be Jabril Peppers.
I think it's going to be a combination, but I think what you could see too, depending on we're talking about mixing up defensive coverages. I think what you could see too is if they go to a zone, it could be something like, hey, they'll use a Tavai or Taki to kind of jam him or just kind of nudge him just off his route just a little bit. And then he'll cut either in or out, and you'll see one of the safeties come and try to cover him after that. Or I think that Peppers you could see on him. I think Peppers makes the most sense. And yes, Todd, I also do think this will be the one win. If they have the best shot, I think this is the one they have the best shot at.
No, with my keys, I think your two defensive interior guys and Jelani Tavai have to play lights out this week.
Absolutely.
Because you have to neutralize that ground game to the point where they're not controlling the line of scrimmage and they're not dictating the pace. If this game is back and forth where they're having to throw the ball too much than what they planned on, then I think you have a legitimate shot. I think they're going to be able to move the ball. I really do. And so that's the number one key. Number two, offensively, and again, it goes to the red zone. I think Look, I know they've been conservative. I mean, you're 3-10. There's a month left of the season. Get more aggressive in the red zone. Play action pass down there. Um, take a shot at the end zone on first down. They seem to be running a lot on first down, then go to a pass on second. Whatever. Um, you know, put the ball in Drake's hands. See what he can do.
Hmm.
Again, I mean, you're 3-10. You know, I think they need to be a little more aggressive down there. I
I
think they
think they
need
do
to.
too. And I also was going to say this when they play the Bills. And I don't want to jump ahead too much. And I'll save it for next week's show, most of it. But I think next week versus the Bills, I hope they throw the kitchen sink at the Bills, like
Yeah,
fake punts, like trick plays. Like, what do you have to lose? You're playing with house money. You have nothing to lose. It's not
yeah,
going to change anything. So just go
no,
for it and
you're
throw it.
still going to end up at the bottom. You
You're still
know.
going to end up with the top 6 or 7 pick. I mean, it doesn't
Yeah,
matter. I mean, it's not going to change what's going to happen. So just go for it. This week, go in, play your game, come off the bye. Coming off the bye, there's a little self-evaluation. There's a little bit of adjustments. They're late in the year. Again, we know what they're gonna do. But I hope they open it up a little bit this week. But next week, I hope they throw the freaking I hope they have. I hope they throw the freaking kitchen sink at the Bills next week. But we'll get to that next week. So,
yeah. But
um,
again, I think they need to be a little more aggressive. And the guy I want to see more of in the passing game is Antonio Gibson.
hmm,
I mean, this is a guy that is a proven pass catcher out of the backfield. I
sure.
mean, and I just don't think they've utilized him enough in that. And I understand Ramondre's the top guy. He's caught a lot of passes in his career, but this is why you brought this guy in.
Keep your answer short on this, okay?
Hmm?
Keep your answer short on this, so we can keep going. But do you think? I totally agree that he's been underutilized. But do you think that's because of system fit? Injury, something totally different? Because I don't understand why he hasn't been used more. And that makes me feel like there's something going on behind the scenes that we just haven't heard or whatever because it doesn't make sense otherwise.
No, it doesn't. And we'll have to see how it all plays out. But yeah,
Hmm.
I think down the stretch, get him more involved in the passing game. I think you'll be able to run the ball this week on this team.
Yep,
So let Ramondre get the runs in, and bring Gibson in, give him the odd carry here and there, and throw him the football.
absolutely. Steve, let's go prediction and final thought. So prediction first. Who do you got?
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be. Um, I don't think this is going to be the one that they win.
Okay.
I think that think they're going to come up a little short because I just the way the defense has been playing, I think Arizona is going to be able to score more points than the Patriots can. I think Arizona wins 27-23.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go Patriots. I'm gonna go Patriots 23, Cardinals 20. Um, I think that we're gonna be having a conversation on one of two directions next week, and if they win, I think we're gonna be saying they did a good job with Kyler Murray, and they were able to have a couple of different turnovers. And the other conversation, which would mean they lose, which would be they weren't able to get enough pressure on Murray. He was able to extend plays, and guys uncovered themselves because you can only cover for so long. And there was a lot of guys were breaking down coverages in the background. You know what I mean? I think it's going to go one of two ways. I would be very surprised if it's something else aside from one of those two things.
Well, I think if they win, special teams is going to play a big role.
It could be absolutely. And
That
we're
was
going to
my
see old
third.
friend Chad Ryland there too.
Yeah,
So,
that was my third key. I think that if they win, it's because of a block punt by Schooler or a big return from Marcus
from Marcus
Jones.
Jones, yep.
You know, something to that effect.
Yeah.
But hey,
We all know. I mean, I would say it's one of the higher commandments on our show. Special teams doesn't matter until it does. I mean,
yeah,
I know it's the third phase, but it can matter for you. I know everyone wants to blow it off, but it can absolutely change games. We saw it here for 2 decades. So, well, anyway. I want to thank everyone for tuning into this episode of Patriots 4th and 2. Sorry for the irregular time. Again, this is just part of the Derek Dad schedule and Steve being amenable to and flexible, which is great. I want to thank everyone for commenting. Todd, as always, of course, you as well. I want to give a shout out to Russ Goldman, Ian Logue. Please do subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, Patriots 4th and 2. Please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you do like, share, or leave us a review, it keeps us high in the podcast rankings so the Patriots fans can find us. We're recording this right now, December 11th. Wednesday at 10 Eastern. We'll be posted Thursday. Next week, we're hoping to probably get closer to our normal time, but we'll kind of go from there. Looking forward to see how this team plays this week, and we will have a big conversation with all the news next week right here, Patriots 4th and 2. Talk to you guys then.